hello there, and welcome to the, is it March? March, March edition. It's at the end of the month, but March edition of FrankieSense and More with Frankie Picasso and my co-host, Brent Marchant. We're going to discuss some movies today that you may or may not have seen, but they're good and they're worthwhile watching. And not everything is coming to the big screen right now. So we have to look for gems, hidden gems.
Well, thank goodness for streaming. And I mean, everything that we're looking at today is available for streaming. So, except for one that's still in theaters, but it's the movies are out there. Just if you want to see these things, do a few clicks on your computer and you'll find them.
Yeah.
So, all right, so we'll start with the movie that's still in theaters, and this is the first 2025 release that we've reviewed on here. This is Mickey 17. It's the latest film from the award-winning director Bong Joon-ho, who is best known for making the movie Parasite from a few years ago. And this is another wild, wacky, crazy movie that Bong Joon-ho has definitely made a name for himself with. Mickey 17 tells the story of a mild-mannered, soft-spoken, hard-working stiff who has a job on an off-world colony in the future as what's called an expendable. And essentially, he's assigned to conduct testing with products, technologies, environmental conditions to see what the safety limits are. Now, if it turns out that he ends up dying as a result of it, well, there's really no need to worry because 3D technology, 3D printing technology has developed to a point where he can be replicated and brought back for reuse, essentially.
With most of his memories.
Most of his memories, his genetics. The only thing that tends to vary a little bit from iteration to iteration is his personality, but basically, he's pretty much the same person he was before. So Mickey, in this case, Mickey 17, gives you an idea of how many times he's been on this go-round, is assigned to work in this off-world colony, testing environmental conditions, and he ends up dying, they think, but they're not really sure. So they end up going ahead and making a replacement, not realizing that he's not completely gone yet. So you end up having two Mickeys, 17 and 18, running around at the same time, which is sort of a big no-no because it's illegal and there's always questions about how they're going to interact with one another. And
fine print says you can't have two. You got to get rid of both now.
Yes, exactly. And the thing is here, they have very different personalities. Mickey 17 is still his mild-mannered, hardworking, soft-spoken self. Mickey 18 is very aggressive and, is out to get whatever he can get for himself. So the two of them end up getting involved with each other and with a whole host of other story threads on this really crazy planet. One is an old friend who's a dealer in illicit substances. One is Mickey 17's girlfriend, who is a badass security person who ends up kind of manipulating him into what's considered illegal sexual activity. And also the head of this colony, who is a politician who bears more than a striking resemblance to a certain politician who most of us don't really like very much these days. And all of these different story threads end up getting tied up with one another. And they might seem like they're separate, but they all do come together in the end. And the thing that's also important about this is that they make a very important statement about the question of expendability, not only in terms of what he's doing in his job, but in terms of just how life itself is valued, human life is valued these days. It's basically looked upon as being discardable, throwaway, and well, if this one doesn't work out, we'll just make a new one. And it's a very powerful socio-political satire that I think right now is really very relevant to the way conditions are playing out in our society. One of the things that's kind of interesting about this is that this was actually originally scheduled for release a year ago. And because of the Hollywood strikes, it got delayed. And, in so many ways, I think that delay turned out to be kind of a happy accident for the film because its relevance to, current conditions is so astounding and so uncanny that the impact of the story is that much stronger than it
Yeah.
might have been if it came out a year ago.
One of the things that really struck me that humans do when they don't understand something, they kill it.
Yes.
You have these intelligent beings who they can't understand, and because they can't understand them, they think they're not intelligent. Just like people who speak English think people, they speak louder if they don't
Yep.
understand your language. And the first reaction, oh, they're alien. We have to kill them. We have to get rid of them. Instead of, why don't we learn from them, or why don't we talk to them or try to communicate with them and see what they know and what they can teach us? And so that was kind of for me a big lesson too. It's like a big wow. Like,
Well, yeah, because Mickey 17 is the only one who's able to actually communicate with them and
yeah,
successfully. And, they're out to try and possibly get rid of not just the aliens, but also to get rid of him.
yeah,
And I mean, he's your one asset at this point that can help you to understand these creatures. And you want to get rid of that? I mean, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But then in the way this world these days,
yeah.
things are going, a lot of things don't make sense anymore. So
Definitely. And so Tony Collette and Mark Ruffalo are the two, king and queen, let's say, of this planet, if you want to put them in that category. And they're brilliant. I mean,
they really are. I mean, Mark Ruffalo's character reminded me a lot of his character from Poor Things last year, only on
100%,
steroids this
100%.
time,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know.
yeah,
And in terms of his portrayal of the politician who runs this place, it's uncanny how much, again, he reflects the attitudes, practices, outlooks, and even vocal inflections of this,
you
previously
shall not
mentioned
be
politician.
named. Exactly.
Now, this movie has been getting kind of mixed reviews, which I'm a little bit surprised about because, some people have said, oh, it's too complicated. There's too much going on. Well, when has there ever been a Bong Joon-ho movie where there wasn't a lot going on in the story? I
Yeah,
mean, I didn't see that as being an impediment. I will say that there are a few things that maybe could have been done a little differently. Certain story threads maybe aren't developed as fully as maybe they could have been. But in terms of the overall message of the film, in terms of its, relevance to current conditions, in terms of the performances. I mean, this was honestly, I have to admit that this was probably the first time I've seen Robert Pattinson in a
I'll
role
say that.
where I actually liked him. I've
Yeah,
never been terribly much of a fan of his, but I thought he was great here.
yeah,
Of course, as you said, Tony Collette and Mark Ruffalo are both great. Also, the actress who portrayed Mickey's girlfriend, Naomi Ackie. I don't recall seeing her in anything prior to this, but she was great.
yeah. You know what?
Um,
I think part of the issue is too that audiences want to be spoon fed.
yeah,
You don't go to a movie just to be spoon fed. Like that doesn't
yeah,
make it interesting.
exactly, exactly. So I mean,
Look at all the messages that were within it that most people probably wouldn't get because it didn't, they just see it for what they see. They're not looking behind the screen or behind the idea or behind anything. They're just what's there is what I get. No,
well, it's
that's
a
why we
kind
do
of
the show.
it's a kind of story that I can't imagine a lot of Christian fundamentalists or MAGA supporters being terribly in favor of. It's like, well, okay, the movie wasn't made for you, so
Right,
if you're of that mindset, then don't see it because you're not going to enjoy it.
right.
But anybody who enjoys a good social satire, I think, is really going to like this one a lot. And that's actually another criticism too that's come up is then the fact that people have said, "Oh, well, it's so over the top, it's so excessive," but it's satire. It's supposed to be.
Yeah,
I mean, it wouldn't be satire if it didn't do that. So
yeah.
uh, I like this one a lot, and I recommend seeing it while you still have a chance to see it on the big screen because I think that's a great place to see it. Special effects are really good, and just the overall overwhelming nature of the story coming at you. Um, the big screen really lends a lot to doing that, and Bong Joon-ho is one of the best directors when it comes to giving you material like that. So
And
I really like
the
this.
actor who was the Asian guy who I can't remember his name right now.
Stephen Yun.
Yeah, Stephen Yeun, who I loved in the one with the celery, Grandma.
Oh, Minari. Yeah.
I love Minari.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like him a lot. He's in this too.
Yeah, I wish they had given him a little more to do
Yeah.
than this story did. Because I think it would have added again another added layer of depth. I mean, he ends up being supposedly one of Mickey's oldest friends, but doesn't hesitate to manipulate him when it needs to be the case, especially when it comes to him dealing his trade in illicit substances.
Yeah.
So, but I like this one a lot. I recommend it highly. I'm going to give it 4 stars.
All right.
Okay, so from one of the first releases of 2025, we go to the one of the last remaining award season releases from 2024, and that's The Room Next Door, which is the latest film from Spanish director Pedro Almodovar, who is this is his first English language production. This is a right to die movie. And even though those aren't especially new or original at this point anymore, the one thing that distinguishes this one, like all the others that have preceded it, are the particulars of the story. In this case, we have a situation where two old friends who've been long separated for a while are brought back together when one of them finds out that the other has been diagnosed with cancer. Tilda Swinton is a former war correspondent who is now she's not in hospice, but she's definitely in faltering health. And her old friend, Ingrid, played by Julianne Moore, who is an author of a book that recently came out about her fear of death. Well, that gets put to the test in this movie when the two of them become closer again, and Martha announces her intention that she wants to, uh, engage in personal suicide and would like someone to be there to be close at hand when the time comes. That throws Ingrid into quite a dilemma in terms of, on the one hand, wanting to help a good friend, but by the same token, having to confront the fear of her fear of death. But she agrees to go ahead with it, uh, somewhat reluctantly, but she figures she needs to grow and she needs to get over this and she needs to be, the supportive friend she wants to be. The particulars of the incident of the act have been worked out in meticulous detail ahead of time, so that there's really not a lot of surprises for what Ingrid's going to be up against, other than the fact that Martha will not tell her the specific time of when the incident is going to take place. However, what Martha does is she rents a vacation home in the Hudson Valley because she wants to be in surroundings that are beautiful and comfortable, very different from the kind of life that she's lived, which has had a lot of personal anguish. And of course, in her work as a war correspondent, she's seen the darker side of humanity. Um, and basically, what she tells Ingrid is that she will be carrying out this act using a lethal medication that she acquired clandestinely, and she'll do it in the room in the house where she's staying. As long as the door of the room is open, it means she's still alive. But when she closes it, it means that she's gone ahead and carried out her plan. And again, the time of when this is going to happen is not disclosed. So Ingrid is somewhat on edge most of the time, trying to figure out, is the door open? Is the door open? Um, so it ends up getting, quite philosophical in terms of discussing the question of the right to die. But more fundamentally, it also deals with the question, a more basic question of the right to choose one's own destiny. And that's one of the things I think is really important, not just in terms of this film, but in terms of the right to die question in general.
Right.
I mean, who has the right to tell you when you can or can't go ahead with something like this? Um, this is probably the most sensitive film that this director has ever made. Um, and the two lead performances are just phenomenal. I mean, I really liked both of them. I'm a little surprised that neither of them picked up more recognition during award season than they did. Tilda Swinton was nominated for a Golden Globe for Best Lead Actress in a Drama, but that's as far as it went for either of them. And that really kind of surprised me.
I'll be honest with you. Like, I love the story. I love everything about it, the discussion, like everything, the philosophical part of this. But I found it difficult to watch, and especially in the beginning, I found the relationship awkward. They're, how are you? Everything was a little bit superfluous. Like it didn't feel.
Yeah, I agree with you. And that unfortunately is kind of typical of what goes on in a lot of Almodovar's movies.
Mhm.
He doesn't always know quite when to censor himself or to edit himself. And yeah, there were times early on in the film where I was saying, okay, let's get on with this
Yeah,
already. I mean,
because I'm like,
you know,
I got to get out of here. Like this isn't happening for me. The tone of it or something. I don't know. It was just,
but
yeah,
to a certain extent, I think it kind of, in a subconscious way, added to the dynamics of the story and the fact that this is a situation where these are old friends who have not seen each other for a while, and these are the circumstances under which you're going to reunite. I mean, there's a certain awkwardness.
there was an
And
awkwardness, and there was an awkwardness, and I wasn't sure in the very beginning if I believed their friendship was that close because they seem like, how are you? Oh, I'm good. How are you? Oh, I'm good. You know, like just like best friends who haven't seen each other, you know, like you'd be like hugging and I don't know. Like just to me, I
well,
just
they had been good friends when they first both started their careers, but then they both went in very different paths. I mean, Martha became a war correspondent, Ingrid became a book author, and they just didn't see each other for a long time. I mean, when Ingrid first gets the news about Martha, she hears it from a mutual friend at a book signing.
right.
I mean, if they're really that close, I mean, you would think that she would know about it,
Yeah,
more readily than that. But because there is this long-standing connection between the two of them, it's something that she can't let go of. She has to go see Martha
right.
to see for herself if she really is in this state, and also to find out, you know, is there anything I can do to help? Is there anything I can do to, reunite this connection? Um, and it's made all the more difficult again because of the fact that Martha's dying and Ingrid's dealing with her fear of death.
Right.
And
Right.
so there's that's always going to be kind of a boulder between the two of them. Even when they get more involved with the actual playing out of this scenario, it's still like the elephant in the room that's always there. But ironically, they end up also being teachers of sorts for one another. Martha obviously is helping Ingrid to overcome some of the lingering feelings that Ingrid has about the fear of death. And Ingrid is there to show Martha, who's had a difficult life, that it's indeed possible to have compassion, kindness, comfort in your life, especially at a time as dire as this.
Yeah.
And that's something that Martha really needs because of the many difficulties that she's had in her life. Um, and it really feeds into her desire to want to go out on her time and her terms, because that's something that seems to have been denied to her in many of the other aspects of her life up to this point. I mean, the last thing that she wants to do after having had a life like that is go through a lot more pain and suffering, and to be doing it just to be appearing, a noble soul to others. Well, maybe she's tired of being the noble soul all the time and just wants to do things her way for a change. And, what better time to do that than a time like this when you're going to be going on your way out. So make your exit the way you want to go.
Yeah.
And that takes a lot of courage, but she's faced it head on and she's very resolved about it. And again, the fact that she has outlined all the details of how she wants this to unfold. I mean, how many of us,
Ridiculous.
you
Yeah.
know, are willing to go to that level of meticulous planning for something like this?
Well,
But
I guess you don't know until you're actually faced with
yeah,
mortality. Like really, it's your, I mean, we all know we're going to die, but we don't know when. But she really kind of did know, her days were numbered.
and I think that's something that this movie is valuable for, the fact that it calls that question for viewers to address for themselves. Because if you do suddenly find yourself in that circumstances, what are you going to do? How are you going to handle it? Are
Yeah.
you going to let things just sort of fall the way by chance? or are you going to make a statement saying this is
Depends on
what
your
I want for
faith
myself?
too, right? It depends what you believe. If you believe that
Yeah.
suicide is, you go to hell for it, or like all kinds of things have to, factor in to
Well,
deal.
yeah, and also when you're facing the prospect of seeing the handwriting on the wall, what you will face if you don't do it.
Right.
Are
Yeah.
you strong enough to do that? Do you really want to do things that way?
I mean, I think about, some of those folks who have done it with Lou Gehrig's, and you're not going to be able to breathe, and it's going to be horrible. And like, why would you put yourself through that? Like,
Exactly.
yeah, when you could
And
go,
and I think that Martha sees that as a form of kind of phony nobility.
yeah,
That, oh, I'm going to be strong right until the end. Well, what if you really aren't that strong?
yeah,
Why should you have to subject
strong
yourself to
for,
that?
yeah,
You
yeah,
know?
yeah. Are your kids going to appreciate that? Probably not.
Well, that's true. And in this case, it's interesting you mentioned kids because she's got a
Yeah,
daughter who she's been long estranged from. And, it's been one of the sources of great pain and anguish in her life. And, Martha wants Ingrid to let her daughter know when the event has happened, but she doesn't feel any particularly strong compulsion to have her daughter present or nearby when any of this is unfolding, because basically, well, my daughter's been dead to me for a long time. So what difference does it make? Why would I want to have her there,
right.
for the last few minutes?
Yeah.
So, um,
But it's
again,
also an
that,
opportunity when something like that's going to happen is to make amends and to repair some relationships or have deep conversations or tell the secrets that you've been holding so that people aren't left wondering. Like I think that's a kindness too that you could do.
well, given the fact that the daughter was the one who walked away, there's a part of Martha who felt like I don't really owe you anything at this point because you abandoned me.
Right.
So, you know, but this is a very thoughtful film. Like you say, there are some things early on that probably feel a little awkward, as you said. But I would still give this one 3.5 stars simply because of the performances and because of the questions that it raises for viewers.
Right.
Okay, so next we have a movie that I want to thank Frankie for recommending to me. I had never even heard of this, but this is a movie that's playing on Netflix. It's called Number 24. Tells the story of what happened in Norway during World War II when the Nazis invaded, and the resistance movement led by a national hero named Gunnar Sonsby. Basically, the story of what happened in Norway during World War II probably isn't very widely known outside of Scandinavia. So this may take a lot of viewers by surprise, saying I wasn't even aware that
Yeah.
stuff was going on there. But Germany overran Norway pretty easily, and it forced the royal family and the Norwegian government to go into exile in the UK. And they were working with UK military intelligence to carry out missions in Norway aimed at destroying Nazi assets and undermine their efforts of controlling the country. And the thing that's interesting is that this young man, Gunnar Sonsby, is willing to step up and play a major role in carrying out those roles for his country and for the exile leaders living in the UK. Um, it's a little bit episodic in terms of the way the story is told, but it does bring to light a number of the events that took place in Norway that, again, have probably received little to no attention. Um,
They
and
were
it's also,
unbelievably brave, like unbelievably
oh,
brave.
yeah. And the other thing that was interesting too is that there were a number of times when Gunnar and his associates were called upon to go after Norwegians who would have become collaborators
Yeah.
with the Nazis. And they even say that the Norwegian Nazis, in some cases, were even more brutal than the Germans. Um, but it was something that had to be done if they were going to take back their country and kick out the Germans. So the film basically examines the bravery that these characters went through. It also examines the personal costs that they had to deal with because they were still dealing with Nazis who were being very, deliberate in terms of seeking retribution when need be and so forth. So this is a little known gem that is one of the more interesting and more different World War II stories, of which there have been a lot in the past couple of years. Um, and it's readily available on Netflix. So I would, recommend if you're
I
interested in
thought it was
seeing.
really good. I really don't like war movies, but I really like this movie. And it was kind of interesting, as he became a lecturer in the end, and
Yeah,
he was touring and talking at universities, and that young girl came up to him and said, do you know this name? And it was the name of a collaborator that,
yeah,
that he had actually killed. But he
yeah,
told me, no, she goes, that was my grandfather. And
yeah.
that was kind of like, whoa. Whoa.
Well, I mean, under circumstances like that, we're all faced with hard choices that we
Yeah,
have to, to say, are we going to do this or are we not going to do this?
yeah.
Um, and especially in a peace-loving country like Norway. I mean, that they said early on when the Germans overtook the country, they did it like in rapid fire motion. It was, it's very much a blitzkrieg in Norway in the same way that it was in Poland, only it wasn't as widely known as what took place in
Yeah,
Poland.
I mean, Norway's such a fantastic country. It's like one of my favorite countries. The people, everything about it, I just love them and how they run their society. And to think that, wow, look at these guys. They were like so brave and just they really stepped up and took it back. Like, and
Yeah,
I
you
know
wouldn't
it's so
you
strange
wouldn't
about it.
you wouldn't exactly think of Norwegians as being aggressive.
No,
It was their homeland. I mean, they just said, "Hey, we have to do this because we need to protect our homeland."
yeah, yeah, no, really good story. Watch it if you like. I mean, it's a true story, so watch it if you like history. But
And it's a good portrait of courage as well.
yeah,
So
the good character.
I'm going to give this one 3.5.
Yeah, yeah. All right.
Okay, so next we have one of the most overlooked films of 2024, which absolutely boggles my mind. It's called How to Make Millions Before Grandma Dies. It's a film from Thailand. It's a comedy drama about an aging grandmother who is terminally ill and her grandson who comes in to take care of her. And she's kind of tough on him because he's always been a little bit flighty, a little irresponsible. But she's also always seen the potential in him to rise to the occasion when need be. And this film follows the nature of their relationship over the course of his caregiving. And it is so heartfelt and so beautifully told, so well acted. And this was originally in theaters for like a week back in September of last year. And it was supposed to go to Netflix. And I even saw, excuse me, the promo ads on Netflix for it. And then they just vanished.
Wow.
But where did this movie go?
I'm so glad you found it because that actually is one of my favorite movies I've seen in a long, long time. And
Yeah,
I love the arc of it. I love the humanity of it. I loved how, this family, this normal family, but grandma is very independent. She's still out there selling, her rice every morning, and she's so independent. And she's like, "Why are you coming around? Why is everybody coming around?" Nobody wanted to tell her she had cancer, but her grandson said, "You know what? I think you should know. You got cancer, and you're going to die." And
and she knew it on some level
yeah,
too. I mean, this really wasn't coming as a surprise. In that regard, this reminds me a lot of the movie that came out a few years ago called The Farewell, where that
yeah,
same sort of dynamic,
yeah.
came up. But the
Actually,
difference here is that in The Farewell, grandma was kind of oblivious to everything. And in this case, this grandma was very street smart in
yeah,
so many ways.
yeah.
Um, and, she also, in the course of all of this unfolding, she had to deal with her other family members who,
Her
interestingly
sons.
enough, yeah, I mean, they try to portray themselves as being so concerned, but they ended up being in many ways not nearly as responsible. Excuse me,
No,
not
the
nearly as
eldest,
responsible as the grandson, who was the person who was least suspected of being that responsible.
Yeah. I mean, he did initially go in it without his heart in it and looking for some money, but it was beautiful to see how things can change. Things can change. I mean, she had one son who was just such a loser, stole all her money. She gave him lots of money, and the grandson's like, "Why do you give him stuff?" And she goes, "Because he just can't do it himself."
Yeah.
And the oldest son who can look after everything, he really ignored mom. Like he had the money to look after her, but until like he's almost like forced to do it, so it looks good. And she had this dream that she wanted to be in a resting place, in a beautiful resting place, because in her mind, in her society, the better the resting place, the more fortune comes to the rest of your family that follow you, your
Yes.
ancestors, for the next generations. And so she wanted them to be successful by her having a successful looking gravesite. And it was very important to her, very
Yep.
important to her. And the family, like, "Well, we're not going to waste our money on that. We don't have money for that." And it was so important to her. And it was really beautiful to see. And the daughter, her daughter really did love her. And what she had a line, and I wish I could remember that line because it was so good about women. Sons, the daughters do everything, but the sons get the money or something. It was something to that effect, but it was so true, because
Yes.
really the daughter was the one quietly always there doing everything.
Well, the other thing I liked about this too is how feisty grandma was
Oh,
too.
yeah.
I mean, she appears to be this little innocent aging lady, but don't push her buttons because she'll push them right back.
100%. And,
You
and
know?
when she lost her hair, it's a hairball.
Yeah.
Like no like shame or embarrassment. That was it. This is how it is now.
And she was also determined to stay as independent as possible, as long as possible,
Yep.
despite everybody else saying, "Oh, you really need to be coddled. You really need to be, under all this care." And she's kind of like, "I'll go there when I'm ready."
Yeah.
You know. So in the meantime, leave me alone and leave me my grandson because he is taking good care of me. He is, rising to the occasion here. Don't get in his way.
He was brilliant as an actor.
Yeah.
Was absolutely brilliant. And like the way his eyes would sparkle, or you could see what's going on behind his head, like in his mind. And then, he was like after the almighty dollar, but then, see slowly, it was beautiful. It was just, this is a 5 out of 5 movie for me, from everything, from the direction to the actors to the story to everything. For me, I love, love, love.
Yeah, I'm gonna give it 5 stars too. And the thing that, I was really impressed by is this was the first feature film from this director.
Beautiful.
He's done some TV show directing prior to this, but this was his first film.
Yeah.
His name is Pat Bunidapat. And I think he's somebody who you really need to keep an eye on for the future.
Yeah.
I think he's somebody who's destined to go the same route as somebody like Bong Joon-ho.
Yeah.
Different kinds of stories, but the
100%.
same level
He
of talent.
understands people. He understands human beings, and I
Yeah.
think that's really important. I watch a lot of Asian TV, a lot of Asian shows, and from everything from Chinese to Korean to Taiwan to Thai, and this is brilliant. It's one of the more brilliant.
Yeah, and I really don't understand how this got ignored during award season. I mean, it didn't really pick up anything. It did win some awards at film festivals and things like that, but I mean, it was never under consideration.
Never had anybody backing it, I guess. Money talks. Money
Well,
talks.
and also as I mentioned, it was supposed to go to Netflix and then disappeared. Ended up getting picked up by another distributor
Mm.
who is now streaming it on several different online platforms, which is the place where you can catch it. But this one is, you really have to see this one because it's such a touching,
It is a
well-made
beautiful
film
movie.
and it really deserved more than it got. Okay, and as long as we're talking Asian films,
Another beautiful movie.
another beautiful movie. This one is from Hong Kong, All Shall Be Well, which tells the story of a low-key, long-term same-sex couple living in Hong Kong, where one of the partners ends up passing away unexpectedly without having made provisions for her partner in a will or in any other things. And even though the two women were together for many years,
Over 30 years.
Yeah, and even though the family sort of accepted them kind of at arm's length, recognizing that, grandma's with her friend,
Yeah, they
you know,
called her auntie,
yeah,
and yeah, I mean the family would go there once a week or once a month anyway for
yeah.
sure for dinner, for family dinners. They weren't, ostracized or anything. Everybody came around and ate at their table. So it was,
But when she dies, all of a sudden, all bets are off.
yeah, so
Became a grab to see,
disappointing.
well, let's get the house and let's get the assets, and the
Last,
partner got pushed to the side.
yeah, everything that she
Even the
wanted for,
grandchildren were a little bit upset with that because they recognized that,
yeah,
hey, these two women were more than just roommates. I
yeah,
mean, and they always treated us like um, we were the granddaughters or the
yeah,
grandchildren of both,
yeah. They
you
helped them
know.
quite a bit. And it was
Yeah,
very sad and disappointing to me to see how somebody who was treated as family or who's seen as family, and then when her partner died and she said, but my partner, she would not want this. This is what she
yeah.
would like this. And they go, yeah, but it's a money issue. Like we don't care. Without any respect at all to her wishes or her desires or her knowing, this woman more intimately than any of them did. They
Yeah.
just, you don't count anymore. Goodbye.
Well, and it was more than just the finances too. I mean, the deceased partner wanted to have her ashes scattered into sea.
Right. That.
And like, oh no, no, we have a place where we think that she will be better off.
So yeah, they wanted her in a mausoleum and
Yeah.
in an
And
urn.
then like they told the partner, I'm sorry, but you're not part of this decision because you're not family.
Right.
Well, what defines family?
She wasn't even allowed to sit up front at the funeral. I
Yeah,
mean, like stuff like that. It was just so annoying and so made me so angry. And to think that people think that way and would treat her that way after, so many years together. And really, it had to hurt so badly to be, you think of these people as your family, you've given everything to them as family, thought of them as family, and then they just turn on you like, you're not, no, sorry, you're nothing to
well,
us.
I mean, the fact that the family was sort of begrudgingly accepting of the surviving partner as well as they did when the both of them were alive is somewhat revolutionary in Asian culture in many
Yeah,
ways still.
yeah,
But again, once the death knell fell, well, then all bets were off, and it's like, okay, move along, go do your thing
and
now.
it's a really good lesson in making sure you plan the ending.
Yep.
If there's something important to you, make sure you sign it. She did have a will, she just didn't sign it.
Yeah.
And so that is a very important lesson. And it's also an important lesson, family, like you can't really trust people.
No, no, I mean inheritances do funny things to
Yeah.
family a
Yeah.
lot of times.
And even the grandchildren, like they wanted to give the grandson, the apartment that they lived in, an apartment that they bought together, even though her
Yes.
name wasn't on the lease, they bought it together. And they're going, oh, well, we're going to take it from you and give it to them. And the grandson at first said, oh, I'm never taking anything from her. She has to stay there. It's her apartment. He understood that. But then when, time goes on a little bit, you start, oh, I could get married and I could live here. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Sure.
Yeah, exactly. Then it became suddenly became very convenient.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's really a shame. And you know, when it comes to um, the circumstances involving same-sex couples, this kind of thing was pretty common in this country for a long time. It's
Yeah.
not as common as it was, but with changing social conditions these days, I mean, who knows? I mean, it could be going back that way. Um, so I mean, this is an important cautionary tale, I think, also the same-sex couples in particular,
Yeah.
because the protections to begin with just aren't quite as solid to start with. And if conditions continue to change, they may become even less solid over the course of time.
Yeah.
So it's something to really, pay attention to. Um, this is a beautifully shot film, and it's got a beautiful soundtrack to it as well. And I love the performances.
I do.
Director Ray Yugong, who made this, is a director from Hong Kong who specializes in doing a lot of LGBTQ cinema,
Okay.
and he's done another great job with this film. Um, the only thing I have a little bit of a I wouldn't call it a criticism, but just an observation is the fact that he sometimes tends to be a little too deliberate in the way he tells his stories, where it's like, okay, you don't really quite need to spoon feed me the way you've done it. You
Yeah.
know, you
Yeah.
could be a little more nuanced in the way you're handling it. But still, in all, I thought this was a really wonderful film. Another one that, again, kind of flew under the radar. Um, it played in our house theaters here in Chicago for like a week and again disappeared. But thankfully, it's available for streaming online. So if you want to catch it, there's multiple sources where you can go see it. So
Yeah. I liked it. I give this one a 4, maybe 4.5.
yeah, that's what I would do too.
Yeah.
I would give it a 4.
Yeah.
So.
But the other, oh, you guys have to see the grandma one. It was such a good movie. I
Well,
know
it's
that you want to
interesting.
talk about your predictions.
Oh God. Well, I said when we did the Oscar show last month that this was a hard year to call, and that's exactly the way it turned out.
Yeah.
Um, I got 3 out of 6. I got the actor, and supporting actress, none of which was terribly hard to call. I mean, but the other 3 were categories where things could have gone either way. And basically, yeah, in most cases, it was coming down to issues between the brutalist and Honora. I went in most cases for the brutalist, and the Academy went for Honora, which I'm finding it's interesting. I've seen a lot of things on social media where a lot of people who have watched it and didn't see it before the Oscars have come away from it saying, why did this get so much attention?
Oh my
I
God, I
mean,
loved Honora. I did. I
I
said this
know you did,
before.
but I mean,
Yeah,
I'm seeing a lot of people saying, well,
they're
it was
not getting
okay.
it. They're not getting it. It's another movie that's not spoon feeding you exactly. You gotta go behind the curtain. But it was a big shockaroo, when Oz and like nothing really major there happening. So
Now, well, I mean, that was kind of the track record that Wicked was going through
yeah,
all season long. So I mean, it didn't really surprise me that much. The one thing that really, I think of the 3 awards that I did miss, picture, director, and actress, the one that surprised me the most was actress. I really thought it was going to go to Demi Moore because she had picked up the most number of wins during award season, and there was a lot of sentimental favorite
yeah,
uh, behind that. And when they called Mikey Madison's name, I was really, and even Demi Moore's reaction in the audience was kind of like, really,
yeah, yeah. She's like,
Um,
yeah,
so that was a little bit of a surprise, but you know, I know you liked Honora, but I have a feeling that over time this is going to be looked back on as one of the Oscar wins that is kind of more forgettable. That a lot of people are going to go, yeah, why did they give it to that? Um, Kind of like the same way they look at Shakespeare in Love and
yeah. I get it. I
you
get
know,
it. But I also
yeah,
know she did she took Russian lessons. She did like it wasn't just, oh, I'm taking my clothes off and I'm gonna win. It
yeah.
really she was a little bit deeper than that. So but there was something, I mean, to me, her comedic timing, this stuff was fun and funny. And I just felt, her sense of humanity in her. And I liked it. Anyway.
There's one other picture that just came out, and this was a bit of a surprise. The actor Jonathan Majors, who was caught up in all the scandals involving the abuse allegations back in 2023 from former girlfriends and so forth. He had made a film back then called Magazine Dreams that was looked upon as being his breakout role that was really going to establish him as a big Hollywood star. Um, and when the allegations against him surfaced, um, the distributor dropped the film. And, I thought it was going to be disappearing into the ether, never to be seen again. Well, surprisingly enough, it got picked up by another distributor and
Wow.
is in theaters right now and is playing rather widely, much to my surprise. It's basically a film about, ironically enough, given his background, toxic masculinity.
Hmm.
And not so much against women, but just, the ramifications that come from being the uber male. And it's told here through the story of an amateur bodybuilder who never quite realizes his aspirations of being on the cover of magazines. It's an interesting film, and in many ways, it reminds me a lot of the movies of director writer Paul Schrader, movies like Taxi Driver and First Reformed, where you've got troubled loner characters trying to figure their lives out. And the question, throughout the film is, will they do it? I mean, will they manage to turn their lives around or not? Um,
It really
I
likes to
saw,
turn back.
I was like, I saw it in the theaters last weekend, and it really, regardless of what you think about Jonathan Majors personally, it really is an outstanding performance. Um, and the film itself is pretty well made, although it does try to cram in a little too many story threads to make the story work.
Yeah.
So if you are looking to see a film that helps to at least give you a better insight into what drives toxic masculinity, yeah, okay, then I'd recommend seeing this. If it's something that's not your cup of tea, then stay away from it because you probably won't like it.
You know what, Brent? This is like the third weekend in a row I've been looking at the movies in our theaters, and there's nothing. And I remember seeing previews maybe a month ago or 2 months ago of some really good movies coming up, but they haven't
Mhm.
released those movies yet because there's nothing out there I want to see right now.
It's kind of interesting here because I've been surprisingly intrigued by the quality of the 2025 releases I've seen so far. I mean, I like Mickey 17.
Yeah,
Yeah, we didn't talk about it, but there's a spy thriller out right now called Black Bag, which is
yeah, Black Bag.
great.
Yeah.
Black Bag was great. Um,
And then
and
and the one with Jack Quaid, who's what is it?
oh, Novocaine. Well,
Yeah.
no, you can skip that one.
Yeah. So I'm just looking here real quick because it's kind of like Captain America, Dog Man, kid stuff, right?
Yeah.
Minecraft, Disney, Snow White, Death of a Unicorn. Like there's just nothing there for anybody who wants to see a juicy movie to
Is
Ethan
is
did.
the assessment playing there yet?
No.
No, that may be coming up your way pretty soon. I saw that last weekend. That was pretty good.
Yeah.
Um, Tomorrow is the opening for the Penguin Lessons,
What about
which
Alter Nights? Did you?
which is supposed to be fairly good. So um, we'll definitely have a lot more to talk about next month. Hopefully, some of these things will start opening up your way. I'm surprised that you have not yet had a chance to get to see Universal Language, which is a Canadian film to begin with.
Yeah. No.
Um,